Hi everyone, welcome to ThinkLead, a platform that will help leaders think and lead on a whole new level. And it's wonderful to be with you. Of course, we then go all over the planet, to the length and breadth of the planet, and find individuals, leaders who are at the forefront of leading, thinking, and get their views on current issues and leadership, the context of that. Today, I've got someone who, for me, will expand on fear. But first, let me say her name is Gordana Biernat. I've chatted to her a few times. And, well, she just is Gordana. You've got to follow her on Twitter, on social media. I try and say she's a modern-day philosopher, but maybe that's just a way of trying to grasp that she's a thinker. And she's influencing thinking. That's why I have her on ThinkLead, because she will affect your thinking. And we need that in today's world. You can't just be a leader who just acts. You've got to sit and think a bit about things. So Gordana, welcome all the way from Sweden.
Hello, Adriaan. Thank you so much for having me. I love our interviews and our chats and talks.
Gordana, before we talk about fear, I have seen some quotes and some tweets, I think, and you probably do it quite regularly, the ones I've seen on fear. But before we go there, you're in Sweden. Whenever I speak to anyone across our boundaries from South Africa and here where I am in the African bush, and I just try and get a feel for how things are there. How are things on the ground as far as, I guess, COVID-19 is concerned?
Well, I think we have the situation under control because just yesterday or today, I think it was yesterday, they came with the news that if you had COVID, you are immune to it, which means that I think that a lot of our people here are immune to it because we had a lighter way of dealing with it. And I think it is because the politicians chose to listen to real science and they chose this way of dealing with it where we are more free. We do not wear masks. We can go outside. Of course, there are some restrictions. And I feel that people are much more calm and much more satisfied and healthier than I see, for instance, in the US and the rest of the world, because I think that the fear makes you more sick than anything else on this planet. So I think that we are in a good place. I can see it when I look outside. I see smiling people. And I feel that we made the right decision. I'm glad that I'm in Sweden and not somewhere else.
It feels to me like the overall approach by Sweden sort of suits you, Gordana. You know what I mean? Like you are in the right place. I mean,
Yes, it does suit me because I feel that when we start putting restrictions on people, that is where I react and I point to the restriction and I ask, is it real? Is it true? Do we need it? And I feel like, yes, my frequency is perfect for this country right now because I think we are more free, actually.
Gordana, before we go into fear, and maybe you'll go naturally there anyway, but before we go there, I don't want to restrict the conversation, but I'm interested in your overall feelings, positives and negatives, about this global pandemic. What you see happening around you and what you sense as you engage leaders and as you have one-on-ones and as you read widely, as you do all those things, what is your take on it, pros and cons at the moment?
I think that the pros are that everything is on the surface. Every single thing. When we are in this kind of fear mode, everything, if we are able to control the fear within us, then we are able to control the manifestation of whatever it is manifesting. And every time the frequencies are heightened, as they are globally right now, manifestation happens much faster. So we can make changes which are beneficial for us faster. And I think that's the most positive thing that has happened right now. You can't hide anymore. I mean, everything is literally on the surface. At the same time, we live in a world of polarities. So it's not just about the good things surfacing. The bad things are also surfacing. And this is creating a lot of fear in people. So the negative thing is if you dive into that fear, that becomes your reality. And that is a very, very tough place to be in. So I think that actually that everything is on the surface is both positive and negative. But you can't you can't not see it. You have to look at it, and you have to be very, very aware of who you are when you're looking at it, so that you will pick what is best for you and for others, instead of plunging into the fear and allowing it to take you with it, so to speak. It's literally about knowing how to use the fear instead of being used by the fear. So, as again, there is positive and negative things, but I think in the end, it all comes down to here, what you choose to see and how you choose to react to it and how you choose to work with it in the future.
Okay, so let's build on that into the fear conversation. It sounds like such a negative conversation, doesn't it? I mean, we're going to talk about fear, but I think I want to give you two statements on fear, and maybe tell me if you agree, and then we can move more in your direction. I have a feeling that you may partly agree and partly not here, because you may have a different view than most. But first, Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "Courage is not the absence of fear." You know that one, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than fear. So that's an interesting take on fear. And then Mandela said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man or woman is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." So, yeah, I mean, do you agree with those two statements, or is that a superficial way of looking at it, or is there sort of a deeper angle?
No, I do agree with it, because it's all about what is it that you're conquering and what is it that you're seeking. Because if you believe in the fear and you stay in that belief, then your reality becomes pure hell and you have no courage. You think that you're powerless and you won't be able to pass through the fear. But if you understand the true nature of fear, fear is not something bad. I mean, in my entire life, I try to dodge fear. That's the best way I can describe it. I try to dodge fear because I come from a not so good childhood, and I mean, I was dodging fear all the time. So I didn't want to look at fear when I grew up. I thought fear was my enemy. Fear was something that made me feel bad. And now when I look at fear, I know that fear is not something bad, because everything in this reality has a brighter and a darker side. And if I try to look at the brighter side of fear, then fear is actually a friend, because it will save my life. Also, it is, if I look at it as an alarm clock telling me that, Gordana, you're falling asleep. Every time I feel a fearful thought, that is my GPS telling me that I am deviating from my soul's source. I am deviating from who I truly am and falling asleep into the illusion of fear. Because fear is something that we have created here on earth. Our soul is not that fear. And I think that the first quote was talking about knowing that you are this soul, you can conquer fear. Anytime you go into your soul, you can conquer fear, which means that if you believe the fear, if you believe that illusion and you dive into that illusion, you will fall asleep to who you are and you will feel powerless. And that is how fear uses you. How you use fear is you acknowledge that it is there, and then you look at it and you see, okay, I need to take action, or I need to let it go. It's not real, I let it go. It's just a GPS telling you you're in the wrong place right now. What we're doing as a society, we are not looking at fear that way. We see fear as real. It is the reality. So we stay there, we plunge in and we go deeper into it, and we fall more and more asleep to who we are because we feel more and more powerless. It's the same thing as having a hot stove and putting your hand on the stove and asking yourself, why is it burning? Instead of pulling it away, because the stove and the hotness is like the fear telling you, no, that is not who you are. Pull away or do something. I mean, if you would have a bear standing in your doorway, you would say, I need to do something. And fear will tell you, do this and I will save your life. But if the bear is imaginary, like most of the things in our society, you will not be able to run away from the fear. You will stay there and you will not know what to do. And when you stay in that fearful state of mind, you feel powerless and you are not capable of reacting from your soul source. And you can't find the courage when you stay there, when you believe in that illusion. I usually see it as primary fear and secondary fear. Primary fear is that bear standing in your doorway because you need to take action to survive. Secondary fear is to watch the bear on a screen and think that it is real and then react in the same way. Only the bear won't go away and you can't run because it's illusionary. You're looking at it on a screen.
Mm. Okay.
And I feel like when we look at news, we feel the fear and we feel the feelings of the people that we're looking at on the screen.
Mm.
And that is secondary fear. If we feel it as a primary fear and we can't do anything about it, you can't run away, then it locks you into this position where you feel powerless. So when we are looking at a screen, what we need to do is to see it, feel the fear, but say, this is not about me. And then go, what can I do to help? And if you can't do anything to help, you release it and you let it go, or you take action and you help. And that's how we get rid of the fear in our bodies. I think I read somewhere about scientific experiment that was done with animals. I think it was possums, and they were looking at a possum being chased by a fox. And the possum lay down. The fox went round and round and round like this, looking at it, the fox, and then it went away. So the possum realized, okay, so I survived this. He stood up, and then he started shaking in his body like he had an epileptic seizure or something like that. And after a while, he just strutted away like nothing had ever happened. And you might ask yourself, why did he do that? Well, what he did was he released the energy that the fear created in his body, because his body knows that if it stays there, it will kill him in the end because it is toxic. We humans do not know that. We don't know how to release something that we have allowed into our mind and state of being by watching the news or being afraid or talking to a neighbor and getting afraid, by believing in that fear. And it stays there like a program. So we need to shake it off or act, not stay in it and just feel powerless.
Are we seeing more fear? And let me just add a question to that. It's easy to come up with obvious examples of someone who demonstrates fear, right? So someone's pointing a gun at me, or there's a bear, or someone robbing my house, or I'm going. But what are the less obvious ways that very bold leaders, bravado and ego, they seem to think they don't have fear? Okay, and they demonstrate, I have no fear in this world. I just move forward and bulldoze over people and do it. So two questions. One is, are we seeing more fear in the world, do you think? It's a difficult time to ask that in the middle of coronavirus, I know. But and secondly, what are the traps that these top leaders can fall into where they believe they've got no fear, but if they really look at it deeply and honestly, they realize that they do demonstrate fear in different ways?
I think it's always about projecting thoughts into the future. The future is unknown per definition, and the unknown is scary to everyone, including the leaders that say that they don't fear anything. So if you're always projecting something into the future, you will be in fear mode because you don't know what is going to happen in the future. And if you look at media, for instance, I mean, they should be reporting something that has happened. And they're actually reporting something that might happen or will happen. And that is fortune telling. That is not news. That is someone telling you what the future might look like. And if we look at COVID and all the other stuff happening in the world, I mean, this is a future projecting of horrible things all the time. And you cannot control that. there is no one here on earth that can control what is in the future or that can know what is in the future. So of course there is more fear right now because we are so focused on something that isn't in the now moment, of something that might be. And that's where the most of the fear comes from, the uncertainty of how things will turn out. We're talking about the new normal. People go, what is the new normal? What is this? And of course there's fear in this because we don't know what the future brings. We usually don't know that anyways. But this is a heightened situation because there is danger involved in it, or perceived danger, or I don't know, shown danger. They're showing us a danger in the future. No one can predict that. It is impossible to predict anything. I don't actually know what's going to happen the next second in my life. I can think and I can say this is probable or this is possible, but I cannot know for sure. And if you're being presented by news that say this is going to happen, then if you're not awake, you fall prey to that.
Now, we're in a world where we walk by sight, don't we? We believe things we see. We believe things that we have seen, or facts or science. While fear plays in the same space as faith. So in a way, part of me says the opposite, or the weapon to fight fear is faith. Faith is walking with confidence into the future that you don't know what's going to happen. We all walk by faith every day, don't we? None of us know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I make an appointment with Gordana as if it's going to happen with absolute faith. But we don't know. You and I didn't know until a second before this meeting that it was going to happen. So we walk by faith. But I'm not sure that we consciously work that faith muscle in order to combat the fear that we experience. So we're willing to be fearful of things in the future, but are we willing to work as hard and put as much energy into faith that's also in the future? Does it make sense?
Of course it does. I think that actually fear is the negative side of faith, if you say so. It might be one and the same thing, only the negative side of it, because it operates in the same way. We believe in it. Faith is about believing in something. And if you believe in a fearful way because you're only trusting what you can see and hear, even if it's secondary, even if it's on a screen, not in your real life, then of course everything will turn out to be fearful for you because you're looking for it. It's a negative synchronicity going on for you. You will find what you seek always. All the esoteric sayings is about what you seek, you will find. Meaning, if you're seeking consciously, you will find things that you like. But if you're seeking unconsciously, then you will find things that you don't like, don't understand, and don't want. And fear will always lead you down that path. Yeah. No, go ahead. Ask the question.
I'm just scared I'm taking you off course, but is it fair of me to say that almost any, thinking of a leader who overreacts in a situation towards a direct report or someone in his or her employ, gets angry with them, shouts at them, whatever, prejudges or, the normal human reaction. Is it fair to say that almost any negative reaction by a leader towards someone or some situation is rooted in fear?
Yes, that's the truth. And fear to me is ego-based thought system. It is the ego feeling threatened. So this is why I think always that we have been talking, I say that when you know who you are, you don't need a leader. Because when you know who you are, you know that you are not the ego. Ego is something you use in this society, in this physical reality, to explore physical reality. But it is not who you are. You are the one using it, which means that you are something else. You are the soul or the spirit using ego as a mask in order to explore physical reality. So ego doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be a good thing. It contains all your desires. But if you think that ego is all that is, well, then you're on a dangerous path, because you will react negatively to everything. Ego is there to separate and to show you others. That is ego's function. But if you think that it is all that is, then you will be trapped in ego, and you will always react in a negative way. You will interpret things in a negative way, even if they're not negative. So that is why a leader truly has to work for inner balance and not try to impose outer control on people, because it's impossible. We are all one. So it's the ego telling you, you need to use power to control others, because otherwise you don't exist. And there is no truth in that. You exist when you go in and find that inner balance. You know that you exist. You know exactly who you are. And you also know who everyone else is. So you can't judge them, because you know their true essence. That is why I think that as a leader, a real leader truly needs to know who they are. They need to achieve this inner balance before they try to inspire others. And I say inspire because you cannot make other people do things. From the spiritual perspective, you can't. That is a violation against free will, which means that you will get a whiplash back at you every time you try to control someone else, because you awaken the ego in the other person. And then there are two egos speaking, and that creates problems. When soul speaks, there are no problems. There are only solutions. When you speak from soul, you find a solution to everything, every time. It is the ego creating all the separation and the polarity, and look here, that they did something wrong and he did something wrong, instead of looking at the solution to this. And a true leader needs to be tuned into that soul source and look for the solutions without allowing the ego to say, I don't know about that. Ego is always a doubt in other people.
Gordana, so what I hear you say as well, as we maybe move towards the latter part of our conversation, the message to leaders out there, in order to make less fear-based decisions, in order to have less fear, and for us to have less fear in the world, it does come back to me, an inner balance, me honestly knowing myself. But I think there are leaders who actually think they do know themselves. They've gone on programs, they've gone on a journey, they've gone on coaching, they've done a lot of things, and they do think they know each other, themselves. But then when the pressure piles on, they somehow, or we all do, we default back to that old self, that fear-based self, and maybe we'll never fully get away from it. I don't know, we're human, as long as we're in this human body.
Yeah, you can't get away from it, because knowing who you are is an ongoing process. And this is what I mean when fear is a trigger. Triggers you into falling asleep. It is your job not to fall asleep. You can't get rid of the fear, because fear is something that exists here on earth, and we are here, so we can't escape it. But to acknowledge, what is fear? What is this? Is it a signal? Do I need to wake up? Do I need to act upon something? Instead of just staying in the fear, allowing fear to absorb you, and then making the decisions from a fear-based thought perspective. When you feel that you cannot breathe, then you are in fear mode. And you need to breathe before you make a decision. Also, you need to have the courage to go against the grain, to go against everyone, if you feel that this is not a loving solution. So you have to be there and look for the brightest, most loving, including solution for everyone. And it's a really tough thing, because politics does not work this way. That's why the best leaders might not be found in politics or business. They're found somewhere else.
That's an interesting statement. We think that's where we find the leaders, don't we? So I guess it's this irony in a way, that fear, maybe we're on this planet to obviously experience opposite. So if fear didn't exist, then I wouldn't know what the opposite was. If
Exactly, you
unhappiness
wouldn't.
didn't exist, if pain didn't exist, I wouldn't know the opposite. So in that sense, philosophically, it is our friend. We try and run from it. We see it as the enemy, but it's not. It's actually our greatest friend, because it exposes us and introduces us to the opposite, which is faith and all the other positive attributes. So it is our friend. Yes, it is our friend. And you don't run away from a friend, whether it's perceived as a negative or positive friend, doesn't matter. You've got to look it in the eye and confront it head on in a positive way.
Yes, because you can use fear instead of being used by it. And
Yes.
when you use fear, you can use it as a signal. We have been talking about that. You can use it as an initiator of change, because fear is a prime mover. It will move you. It will not allow you to stagnate. It will tell you, move, do something. So fear is an energy booster. So is anger. That's the positive side of those things. But it is when you allow yourself to dwell in it for too long, when you do not feel that you are not going back to your normal state, as the possum, when the possum shook and then strutted away happily, you need to go back to your normal state of being, where you allow life force and your soul source and spirit to work through you in this reality. So fear is nudging you into the right direction. It tells you, do not fall asleep, stay who you are, do not fall asleep. So it will help you if you use it as a GPS. It won't help you. It will stagnate you if you dwell in it, if you allow yourself to go into that lower frequency and stay there. You can feel it in your body when you've been in fear for too long. Not only do you have more toxins in your body, because the adrenaline and all that, it turns into toxins in your body, but you can feel your muscles being strained. You can feel how you can't breathe in fully. That is your body telling you that you need to change, do something. That's the next step. And if you don't do that, then you'd get sick from this. So you have several places where you can say no, 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 before you go into total sleep. And most of us, we don't understand that. We just are pulled into it, and then we're swooshed away with the fear. The art form, and what we're talking about in a leader, is to say stop at the first signal and say, wait, what is this? And then use it instead of being used by it. And that's an art form, and you can't prepare yourself for this. You have to do it in the now moments. You have to be present with your soul in every now moment, so that you can recognize what things are when they come towards you. Because if you're in fear mode, you do not recognize them for what they truly are. You see something else. It's like a filter over your eyes. So fear allows us to make a deviation, to go back to soul source many, many times before we stagnate into it. And it's our free will. It's talking to your free will. It's saying you are allowed to say no to this fear. Look at it and see what it is. And you know something, every time, and I've experienced this so many times in my life, every time I look at fear, meaning I allow my light to shine on the darkness of fear, it disappears, because it doesn't like light. It always tries to hide or disappear or do something else. And I see how small it actually is. So the courage, if we go back to the first, your first quote, the courage to look at that fear and see how small it is. It takes courage to look at it. It takes courage to shine your light on it. And it takes awareness. You have to be in the now moment and understand that you are not the fear. You're not your emotions. You're the one feeling them. You're not even your body. You're the one using it in this reality.
So maybe the whole world's response to COVID-19 has been more fear-based than anything else. And that is bad, but it does give us a glimpse into the future, that there's a great positive to that, in that the opposite will come. Hopefully, if we deal with it more maturely, and we're learning the hard way, I think. But yeah, I mean, following on from this whole fear-based approach, maybe there's something really good around the corner, some light at the end of the tunnel. But we as a world, how do we shine our light on this fear? And as you say, if you fight fear with fear, the fear gets bigger. You fight it with your light, with who you are, with faith, then the reality comes to the fore, and that's always smaller than what it looked.
Yes, and it's not about being naive and not looking at reality, because I get this a lot. People say, well, you have to be updated. You have to comment on this. I do not have to comment on every single thing that is thrown upon me. What is more important is that every single human being, because we are one, and we are all contributing to this co-creation of reality. So if I can't help someone in the US, I can help by being very aware of what frequency I am sending out and what frequency I am transmitting to others, because it's contagious. It's like the virus. It is my emotions and my state of being is contagious, because I will affect other people with it. So to take my responsibility for this co-creation is to be very, very aware of my inner balance and to guard that inner balance, because if I am out of balance, I am not able to process this reality in the best possible way for everyone. So what I have to do is to be very, very conscious of my inner balance and my state of mind. Am I in a fear mind? Then I am not supposed to make decisions in that moment. I have to breathe in, give myself time to think before I act. And I'm not talking about 15 minutes. I'm talking about a split of a second, just to say, I am here and I can see this and see it for what it is instead of what others are telling me it is. Mm-hmm. And it's always in the now moment. It is a never-ending now moment where we are reacting and acting and processing, and it's always going round and round. So you can't fall asleep. You're not supposed to fall asleep. Also, we are not supposed to know what is going to happen in the future, because we are here for the funny rush of a surprise. As a soul, you know everything. You don't need to know anything, and it gets a little bit boring. That is why we jump into these suits of flesh and bones and skin, and we allow ourselves to be limited by our senses, sight, hearing, and all that, so that we will not be able to see everything and we can be surprised. It's the only way to get a surprise. It is to jump into this bodysuit. So why are we trying to control the future? Why are we trying to know what is going to happen in the future? When we are here to explore, not knowing and being surprised. It's mind-boggling when I think of it.
Yes, but organizations are all about trying to determine their own future. You know, you've got your icons, your, what's his name again? Jack Welch is saying, control your own destiny, or someone else will control it for you. And people's, our whole being.
But that's not, yes, no. But I think people misinterpret this. Controlling your own destiny is not about controlling your future. It is about knowing who you are and keeping the right frequency, because the quantum field out there is reacting to your frequency. It's not reacting to your plans. It's actually laughing at your plans because they never go the way you think they will go. It is, some might even call the quantum field God here. It's about what you send out. That's how you control your destiny. If you are in fear mode, then others are controlling your destiny. But if you know who you are and you know how to interpret reality from the most beneficial way, meaning you are at your highest frequency. And by the way, being at the highest frequency is not happiness. It is understanding and compassion. That is the highest frequency. So understanding who you are and what you're dealing with in this reality is the highest frequency you can be in. And that's how you can steer your own destiny. Not about planning. Of course, we need some plans, but trying to know what the future is, no, I don't think we're here to do that. And that's why we experience fear and uncomfortable feelings, because that is not what we're supposed to do here.
Gordana Biernat, all the way from Sweden. As always, I can talk all day. I mean, I'm also a thinker, but I think you're a deeper thinker. And thank you for letting us just think through this fear thing a little bit more. And I certainly hope we can get this out to as many people as possible. It'll go on to ThinkLead. ThinkLead is all about helping leaders think on a whole new level, frequency, and then lead at a whole new level as well. That's our platform, ThinkLead. And I think you've helped us raise our thinking levels today. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Wonderful conversation with you. I love the exchange we had. Thank you so much.
So that's Gordana Biernat, and it's wonderful having her. And thank you for joining us on ThinkLead. We look forward to giving you another great interview, hopefully in the near future. Cheers, everyone.